So welcome and everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are celebrating Black Philanthropy Month with Generosity of Spirit, the history, legacy, and future of giving. Before I introduce our amazing moderator, I wanted to thank our sponsors. UPI Loan Fund and the Black Board of Directors Project are sponsoring today's program. I don't believe we have any representatives from either of those organizations on the call to speak, but if I am wrong, please unmute yourself, and otherwise I will move on. All right, well, special shout out to the Black Board of Directors Project and UPI Loan Fund for sponsoring today's session. So now I'm very excited to introduce Ashley LaRussa, who will be moderating today's discussion. Ashley is the founder of Rue Events, an event management company that focuses on supporting organizations and community leaders that foster equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives. She is the project lead at the largest accessible directory of Black businesses in Arizona, blacksfriday.com. I will pop the link in the chat. You should absolutely sign up for their newsletter because it's awesome. Ashley, welcome. The floor is yours.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. And thank you for joining us this morning. It's an absolute honor to be able to introduce our panelists for this discussion because we have some great heavy hitters, as it were, in the state of Arizona with us this morning. And they definitely have a busy schedule. So it's an absolute honor to have them with us. And so thank you again to UPI Loans. Thank you, AFP, for this beautiful opportunity. So I'm going to move into the bios of our panelists, and then we're going to go straight into some of our discussion points. Firstly, I'd love to introduce Taniqua Broughton. She's the Executive Director of State of Black Arizona. Taniqua has proven efficiency in enhancing systems, educating communities, and equipping citizens of Arizona. She is passionate about using data to advance the organization's mission by compelling both leadership and the grassroots community to create solutions that benefit the lives of others. Thank you, Taniqua, for joining us. We also have with us Dr. Shannon Roberts, who is the CEO of Diaper Bank of Southern Arizona. Dr. Shannon Roberts is deeply committed to championing the cause of meeting the community's diaper needs, in addition to serving as the Diaper Bank CEO. He is also a board member of the Educational Enrichment Foundation and the African American Legacy Fund, and the vice president of the Dunbar Pavilion. He is also a Black business owner for Hush Social Club here in Tucson, Arizona. Welcome, Dr. Shannon Roberts. We also have with us Fiona Phoenix, the owner of Dusty Moon Studios. Fiona Phoenix is a mother, a realtor, an artist, an activist, a movement facilitator, and community curator for Tucson's Black Renaissance. When she's not with her 3 kids and working on projects, you might catch her out there dancing on 4th Avenue. Thank you, Fiona, for joining us this morning. We'd also like to introduce Dr. Matthew Whitaker, the founder and CEO of Diamond Strategies, LLC. Dr. Whitaker is the CEO of Diamond Strategies, which is a full-service justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion firm. He is also an award-winning educator, author, DEI and community engagement specialist, motivational speaker, and founder of the Arizona State University Center for the Study of Race and Democracy. Thank you, Dr. Whitaker, for joining us this morning. So we will be starting our discussion with history, with the generosity of spirit, the history, legacy, and future of giving. And starting off with history, I'd love to hand it over to Dr. Matthew Whitaker. Thank you.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to join with you, see bright faces. I see that some of you are caffeinated as I am. So I'm going to get going because I want to make sure that I cover what I need to cover and not go over my time. So I have 4 slides here for you. Let me back this up. What I want to do is make sure that I explain the long history of African-American giving, of Black giving. It precedes America, as I indicate here.
But there's no volume.
Uh-oh, can you hear me?
In my Zoom settings.
Oh, we can. Thank you, Dr. Whitaker. One second. Could we have everyone on mute, or Ori, if we could mute other attendees? Thank you.
Awesome.
The floor is yours.
Great. What I want to indicate is that for African people, it's going all the way back to ancient Africa. Sharing and giving and communalism, not communism, was very much a part of our culture. And what that meant was success was often defined not by your pedigree, how much resources you acquired, but the ways in which and extent to which you leveraged and used your wealth or resources on behalf of the community. And in many societies, in many ethnic groups, if you did not do that, you were ostracized or stripped of your authority because it was believed that your authority was vested in you on behalf of the community. So this is very much a part of our cultural cosmology, and we brought that to the Americas. There's several people that I think are key figures in Black philanthropic history. There's hundreds of them, but I want to make sure that I cover at least 5 of them in my remaining 8 minutes. The first one is James Forten. I don't know if you all are familiar with James Forten. How many of you may know who James Forten was, but he was born in 1766. This is in the 18th century, indeed. And he made a fortune in sail making. And he used the majority of his fortune to fund the Underground Railroad and abolition, which ultimately played a key role in emancipating people of African descent. And again, this was in the 18th century. You have Thomy Lafon, who was born in 1880. He started out with a store, sort of a general store. Then he started brokering loans and eventually invested in real estate. Most of this was within the Black community. The same with Forten, not exclusively, but most of it was in the Black community. They in turn supported these leaders because of their success, but also for their advocacy. It was an expectation between Black leaders in the community that they would give back, and their status as leaders would be in question if they didn't. One of the most famous is A.G. Gadsden, who some of you might have heard about. He was referred to as the Black Titan. Some people refer to him as the Black Rockefeller. He didn't like that very much. But there is a book called Titan that I would encourage you to look at because it's a wonderful roadmap of entrepreneurship and business excellence that is tethered to a philanthropic mindset. He was born in Alabama, 1892, to enslaved parents. When he died in 1996, he was worth about $130 million. And he leveraged a lot of civil rights activity and even more strident civil rights activity. He was fairly conservative himself, but he provided office space, money, seed grants, loans that were never paid back, right? It was kind of like, I'm gonna give you this money, but pay me back if you can. He understood that the activists couldn't. So A.J. Gadsden was huge. And he did this in many cases to reward his community and those who supported him, but also in the interest of succession planning. He knew he wasn't going to live forever, and it was important that he redistributed his wealth within this community and mentored others so that they would be able to do the same thing that he did. Now, Black philanthropy would not be what it is today, specifically without Black women. I began with 3 men on purpose because men have also been philanthropic in nature, but the historical reality is that Black women took it to a whole nother level. Beginning in the late 19th century and early 20th century with the creation of the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs, which brought together all sorts of clubs from the United States. And up until the Pullman Car Porters Organization was created in, I think it was in the 1920s, this was the largest organization of Black people in the United States. I take that back. It was the largest organization until Marcus Garvey came along with the UNIA, and then the Pullman Porters. But up until then, these women, both rank and file, working class, middle class, upper middle class, founded this organization. Mary Church Terrell was the lead, born in Washington, D.C., 1863, to a very well-to-do Black family. Okay, she wasn't just so-called Black wealthy, she was wealthy. And both of her parents were highly educated, and she took it as a personal slight that Black women were maligned on a regular basis and abused and denied opportunities to reach their full potential. And so she provided, and the organization provided, with Ida B. Wells Barnett on your right, etiquette training, college scholarships, training in midwifery. They supported businesses, you name it. They raised millions of dollars, often with collecting the pennies and nickels of average folks. And they argued that your pennies and nickels, if we invest it right, will turn into dollars. So these are two figures that are critical because they open the door for the Oprah Winfrey's, Michael Jackson, who still is in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most philanthropic entertainer in history. He spent and gave away most of the money that he ever made. And finally, I want you to know Maggie Lena Walker. For those of you who may not be familiar with her, she was from Richmond, Virginia, the daughter of a white man and his underage Black domestic worker who raised Maggie Lena Walker right beside her as she was a laundress after leaving the employ of the father of her daughter. She started the St. Luke's Penny Ante loan organization, the Independent Order of St. Luke. And she did so because Black people in her area were denied loans, denied employment opportunities, denied the ability to be able to buy land because they didn't have employment opportunities, and were greatly exploited by the banks that took their money but wouldn't loan them money. And so she grabbed a bunch of folks together, modest women, and said, let's put our pennies and nickels together and make them dollars. And it was extremely successful. When she took it over, it was on the verge of bankruptcy. After she took it over, it excelled. She only hired Black women, but she then consolidated with another bank during the Great Depression to stay open, creating the Consolidated Bank and Trust, which existed up until 2005 when it was bought by a multi-billion-dollar bank out of Chicago. Her story is a remarkable story because the folks in her neighborhood loved her. This is her house to the right. She developed diabetes in an older age, and she needed to have a chair with wheels on it and an elevator in her house. She is known to be the first American to actually have an indoor home-based elevator in her house. And she had a parade in her honor every year. But the legacy that she created, the legacy that these folks created, was one of maintaining that African tradition of understanding that in order for us to excel, we needed to have a communal mindset. And success had to be defined not by degrees, vacationing in Europe, having a boat and a really nice car and whatever that is. That stuff is great. But success was defined by the extent to which and the ways in which you leverage that to bring people up. The National Association of Colored Women's Club had as its motto, lift as we climb, which was something that we sang in our churches in various iterations. It was something that we told our children, and it was something that was passed down for 2.6 million years up until we came America. So the reason why I was happy to be able to share this with you is because I want folks to know that efforts like the Black Philanthropic Initiative, efforts in other states, these are part of a long history of collectivism and sharing. Sharing is a very much part of our culture. And folks need to know that because this effort has not existed in a vacuum. And with that, I believe I've just used all of my 10 minutes. So I will stop and pass it on to Taniqua.
Thank you, Dr. Whitaker, and thank you for the highlights of history because we need to know where we've been to know where we're going. So it's so appreciative. And with that, over to Taniqua going into more history and data. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. And Dr. Whitaker, always thank you for setting the tone. Going after you is never easy, but I love working and collaborating with you. Just to the audience, I think my approach as he has put in history overall, I would love to see over time, if it's in my lifetime, individuals that that are from Arizona. That end up being able to give gifts of that nature and become on the history timeline. So today I'm just grateful to be able to share my experiences and a little bit of data around the spirit of philanthropy. I'm considering my experiences very much the uniqueness of Arizona. While Dr. Whitaker did talk about there are community foundations like the Arizona Community Foundation that has the Black Philanthropic Initiative, the Community Foundation of Southern Arizona has the African American Legacy Fund. We still look and rely on corporations, foundations, and donors to really help support us. So I'm going to just begin to share a little bit of data around some racial equity work, as well as my experiences and thoughts that really hopefully motivate you to think about either your role or how you can encourage others as well to consider the spirit of generosity for our community, and or how community itself can begin to change the view of how it's been giving. So I serve as the executive director for the state of Black Arizona. If you are not familiar with the organization, we create a platform for the synthesis of data, demographics, and research on issues and concerns that inform the community on the status of African Americans in Arizona. We help community leaders and organizations on effective action planning and decision-making related to those issues and concerns that impact us most. So I started my nonprofit career a little over 20 years. And in that journey, it has had funding ups and downs in many of the roles of leadership for those organizations. But when I started leading a culturally specific organization, I started to really internalize some of the challenges around case making, benefits of major visibility, and the lens of impact that was considered for investments from foundations, corporations, and donors. So while there were obstacles, I also kind of realized that I had one nugget that helped me navigate some of the new investments a little bit quicker for the state of Black Arizona than most fledgling nonprofit organizations, and I'll share those insights shortly. In May 2021, the Equality Arizona published a racial equity and philanthropy in Arizona report. I was a part of some of the focus groups and the survey collecting in that report. There was a lot of discussion in the 60 pages of that report, but what I thought was very interesting in the overall findings was that a year later, after the murder of George Floyd, there has been a lot of DEI efforts to increase data, to sort of increase those efforts through Board Source, as well as the philanthropic initiative for racial equity. But those efforts have not shifted the distribution of power and decision-making, or the distribution of funding for the greater racial equity and justice. So when you think about Arizona, I just want you sort of to ponder that statement, because a lot of people have increased their efforts, but how has that shifted sort of that philanthropic push? We have those great women and men who have done that before, but when we think about Arizona, what needs to be thought more and what needs to be said and done more? So here are some data points. 2014, 7.4% of philanthropic giving went to people of color, only 7.4%. 2016, 10% of all philanthropic giving went to people of color, still a small percentage. So I wonder what percentage that would be today and what the percentage should be. So we know in 2020 that almost 60% of philanthropic giving was higher in dollars related to COVID and the BIPOC leaders. And it has helped the spirit, I think, of philanthropic giving for those gifts. But I'm hoping that those gifts help to transition capacity changes for organizations and the community. So why do I say that? So here's my lived experience. Nonprofits are essential to addressing the gaps of services in the community that corporations, businesses, and schools aren't. So it, to me, supports this concept of sort of like the holy trinity, the circle of us working together and feeding each other. It's a sector that I felt was so significant for me to be in and work in. So in 2014, I helped lead the transition of the state of Black Arizona, moving from an advisory group to a nonprofit. And while we had a credible fiscal agent in the beginning, many of those connections that we had wanted 3 years of history that was critical to them wanting to give. But our work and our service was also critical and necessary for the community. So while I wasn't discouraged, I said I had a nugget in the pocket. The nugget that I realized I had in my pocket was built relationships. And so those built relationships have been really key, I think, to the spirit of philanthropy. I've really figured out that at the end of the day, I've been able to really move forward the organization because of the previous relationships that I've had. It has not been easy as a culturally specific organization, but it has been critical to being able to say, hey, we need you to support our organization because these are all the reasons that we understand why Black Arizonans need to be at the table, need to be invested in, and need to grow and thrive in this economy in Arizona. What also has been really great, and I think in the spirit of philanthropy, is moving from giving little dollars to giving bigger dollars. I'm going to need you to consider a bigger investment. I may not be a $1 million organization, but at the end of the day, I'm going to need you to put more towards the impact that I can make on the ground with the community than looking at how big my budget is and deciding that. Because at the end of the day, those dollars that you provide us will change. We can get to the community a little bit quicker. And so a bit of that has really helped me think about why it's been important to be in the role that I've been in, and that the spirit of philanthropy is truly to tell the story, to be on the ground, to tell actual funders at the end of the day, $5,000 is not going to be enough. I'm going to need you to give $25,000. And $25,000 is what is going to be needed to really help transcend this organization and to impact change. And at the end of the day, you've seen my impact at all the other organizations that are not culturally specific. So I think that's just important because for me, I found myself in a space where I had to actually really make a case for my work for the people who look like me. And that was very different than before. And so I think when we think about the things, the systems that are set up, what are we doing to make sure that the roads or the inroads are a lot easier and a lot better for those who actually are doing the work versus creating systems that begin to block them out? So I'm just going to close with a few things that I think are important. I try to reflect the behaviors that I want of others. I give to the organization and I give to other organizations. So I'm not asking anybody in the spirit of philanthropy to do anything that I don't do when I don't practice. And I think that is so critical to it. And then I think philanthropic giving, we know it, it's all about relationships. So build them, begin to work and understand that. But those who have the power, you need to immerse yourself in the new communities that you want to impact. Don't make us do all the work. Understand that we need each other, because the holy trinity of the work that we need to do for the spirit of philanthropic giving and the work that needs to be done for the communities who don't always have that access comes from each and every one of us taking part. So those are my words today.
Yes, Taniqua, thank you for bringing it in and bringing up all of the beautiful things in Arizona specifically we could start to do to be impactful and effective as you have been. We're now going to go over to Fiona Phoenix, who will be discussing philanthropy from the lens of a parent, as well as a business owner, and as well as an artist. So we're looking forward to hearing from you, Fiona.
So I have to admit, I'm a little bit emotional for a couple reasons as we start out here. Dr. Whitaker just speaking on all the Black women who have brought change into this atmosphere, like throughout history, is just really touching my heart this morning and making me, just coming into a more of an understanding of the importance of what I'm about to say and what I'm about to say to y'all. So this wasn't part of my introduction, but I am a yoga teacher. And with this feeling I feel like everyone, we just need to take a moment and process all of what just came out of everyone's mouth, of what Taniqua just said, of what Dr. Whitaker has spoken to us, and just take a moment to breathe, because honestly, I'm feeling that, and I think we just need to do that. So everybody take your left hand and place it in your heart here. Grab your right hand, place it on your belly. Close your eyes. Draw your awareness from your center being inwards. Notice the beating of your own heart. Notice the rise and fall of your belly with your breath. Feeling into ourselves, into our bodies. Coming into an understanding of the importance, the magnitude, and the weight of the words that have just been spoken to us. We bring those words into this container that we have all created here and be impacted by those words. Let us become aware of the understanding of the history, and the energy, and the blood, and the sweat, and the tears that were shed to bring about this change. Inhale through the mouth, like you're drawing in through a straw. Filling the belly up with air. Hold the breath. And release the breath. Exhale. I'm going to do that again. Inhale. Hold the breath. Exhale. Last time, inhale. Hold the breath. Bring that awareness in. Exhale, release the breath. Keeping your eyes closed. Release your left hand to your left knee or the left side of your desk, depending on where you are. And release the right hand to the right knee or right side of your desk. When you're ready to rejoin the room, slowly flutter your eyes open. Come back into the space. I don't know if I have much else to say, y'all, to be honest. I mean, the history is in the making right now. Right now, we are creating the future for what we want to see in our children's lives. I'm looking at this screen and I have to say, I'm seeing someone I love very much. I'm gonna cry. Speaking of mothers. Sorry, I'm very emotional, y'all. Veronica Shore is my son's stepmother, and I wasn't expecting to see her on this call. And she is doing the work as well, and she's here helping me as a mother doing the work that I'm doing, and she's helping to raise my son. And that just, my heart is just so happy to see all of these people in this same room ready to create change. I hear all of you talking in the breakout rooms and sharing what your companies do and what your foundations do. And I'm feeling the energy, and I'm just excited for what we are going to create here in Arizona. As a parent and as community curator of Black Renaissance, which is, if y'all don't know, please look it up, an amazing organization that was really started by Sean Louis. And he is a creative and musician and local. I call him a fire starter because he brought this community together in a big way here in Tucson, and just kind of, we were all able to see each other in that space. And I know that some of us here have an understanding of what that means. When you finally see someone that looks like you doing something that you have wanted to do, or that you had thought of doing, but is doing it. And so to see that was mind-boggling for me, and to be able to come into an organization that is bringing about change for Black artists in Tucson and in all of Arizona was not something I'd ever seen before. Growing up in Tucson, I've lived here for over 33 years, and I've lived other places, so I'm not that young, but I'm young. Yeah, I'm keep it real. But we are here creating change in this community, and it's so important for the next generation. I am literally raising the next generation of Black, Indigenous people of color. That's it, you know. And as a mother, we are out here in these organizations doing the work and pushing in every way possible to bring about the new earth in a way, right? Like, what is it that we want to see change? Because if we look back at history, and especially with what Dr. Whitaker was just saying, it's not been that long since we've, since me and my existence as a human being would have been something of illegal, right? Like I'm some way of just being a human would have been just an illegal existence for me. I'm a mixed race woman, so my positionality in this country just, you know, I wouldn't have been able to exist, and I'm right on the cusp of that. So this is the change that we're bringing about. Is we're just, as mothers, seeing the need for massive amounts of change, because, you know, look at my sons, and they're going to be men who could be gunned down in the street by police officers, right? Like, I can't, as a parent, that has just affected me so deeply, and just made me want to do everything that I can, right? And as an artist and as a business owner, I am not bringing in a lot of income to donate out to organizations, right? But I am using my energy and my time, and I am bringing my kids along for that ride and showing them what it means to do the work. How, you know, I have had, Sean Louis and I have had to have meetings at, you know, 7 a.m. at my house. Like, hey, you have to come over because I can't leave. I have kids and I have things to do. So so he'll come over and we have a meeting in my kitchen. And that's how the work is done right now. Speaking of which, I have dogs and kids coming in the room. So I think my time is almost up. And it's lovely to see all of you this morning. And I hope that we can continue these conversations in the community. I'm here for this work, and I know y'all are too. And it's beautiful to see everyone together doing this. So thank you all for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for connecting with me. And I'll see y'all in these Tucson streets. I actually have to run because speaking of children, I have to take my son to school. So it was lovely to meet all of you. Please connect with me via email or Instagram. I'm on social media, Dusty Moon Studio, and I would love to connect. So take care, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you for your time and reminding us to all breathe. We appreciate the work that you do. Thank you. Much love. That was Fiona Phoenix. Please do check out Dusty Moon Studios and a number of the other projects she's involved with, especially Black Renaissance, which is a beautiful initiative that's happening statewide. We're now going to go into a discussion with Dr. Shannon Roberts, who's really going to be looking at the lens from a nonprofit perspective and an entrepreneurial perspective as well. Dr. Roberts?
All right, thanks for having me. Excuse me. Oh my God, I'm always usually happy to go last. I don't know that I'm so happy to go last today. I mean, you guys have really done a remarkable job at talking about, what's needing to occur and the work that you're doing. And as I'm listening to you all, I've taken a few notes for myself. And, Dr. Whitaker, thank you is all I can say. Thank you. It's really, really appreciated that you would go and share such wealth of knowledge with all of us. And Taniqua, I really like what you said when you talked about sometimes $5,000 just isn't enough, right? And when I'm putting on my hat and thinking about being a CEO, being a philanthropist, I understand that conversation, right? And I think that sometimes we become complacent and afraid to ask because we look at a grant and say that grant is $100,000, right? And if you're like me, the first thing I'm going to do is have my team go and look up 990s, right, to see what type of organizations the grantor funds, right? And when I look at that, I said, wow, well, they've got, this other organization, which is predominantly white-led, and they're giving this organization $80,000. So is my organization worthy of the $80,000? So I think that when I'm looking at those grants, I'm applying for it, I think you hit on it. Relationships, have those relationships. Because I'll tell you, one of the things I'm going to do before I submit that grant, because I don't like being told no, I pout when I get told no, right? So I'm going to reach out and make those connections and say, look, here's really what I'm looking to do and looking to fund. Is this something that's even on your radar, right? And if they say yes, well, these are the types of things we fund. I'm really trying to build that bridge or build that relationship so that when we submit for a grant, I'm going to ask for the maximum, right? Don't be afraid. And I oftentimes see Black-led nonprofits, organizations really afraid to ask for what they truly need, right? And make sure that as you're into your philanthropy, doing your asking, make sure your board's on board and involved. Make sure they understand what you're doing. Make sure that they reach out, they use all of their resources. Because I think that if you don't have all of those components together, you're compromising your ability to maximize the funding that you can receive. Just I'm shifting gears here a little bit, but back to the relationships. I'm just looking at my notes here because this has been good for me. When we talk about relationships, I always find it interesting that when you look at nonprofits, especially in Southern Arizona, I always look at the makeup of their board, and I always look at the constituents or the groups that they serve. And I think it's very, very paramount that your board is made up and representative of the community you serve. I can tell you for the diaper bank of Southern Arizona, my demographic is African Americans and the Latino. So it's a BIPOC, really, is who we serve the most. That is our largest focus area. And so when I look at that, I think, wow, does my board understand my work? Do they understand the needs of the communities we represent? And when I first came to my organization, my board was completely all white. And it took some time to start to make that transition happen and get some Latino representation, some African American representation. And really, sometimes it comes down to some kind of sensitive, I don't want to say cultural sensitivity training, but some diversity training at the board level to get them to understand the difference between, what they as a board perceive that we need as a Black community or Latin American community versus what we really need. And sometimes we've got to disrupt and become uncomfortable by bringing in the very end user, the people that we serve, to tell the board, no, this is what I need. This is how you can best serve my community, because if they don't understand it, who are we or who is the board or we as a leadership team to assume that we're meeting the needs of our community, right? And I think we go for funding, it has a bigger impact when our board and our leadership team really understand what we need as a Black or BIPOC community. I'm a real firm believer, and I think Taniqua touched on this earlier, bringing all the stakeholders to the table, right? And I know that prior to this, I was talking with Ori, and one of the things she and I were talking about was my $10, if I can only give $10, Fiona talked about her energy and time in philanthropy. And I saw in the comments, sometimes that's more than dollars. It is absolutely the truth, because you need boots on the ground. And if you don't have someone that can really do the boots on the ground, sometimes you've got to have a combination of different things, meaning while I may be able to give $1,000 and Fiona may be able to give the boots on the ground, the time and energy, sometimes that $1,000 helps put the resources in place so that Fiona can really have the boots on the ground and get the work done, right? So one's not better than the other. So I look and think that we as a community have a lot of work to do to understand that $10 of giving is just as valuable as 100,000 of giving. Give what you can. The impact is still there, right? And we need to really consider not turning someone off by saying that, well, I gave $1,000. You only gave 10, because that 10 could mean a meal for me and my family. But because I'm passionate about the cause and the issue, that $10 is more meaningful to me to give than the $1,000 that you gave, right? So I think we still got a lot of work to do. I'm just excited that I'm actually seeing some of the results, as a Black business owner. I am the only Black-owned social club in Tucson. And I love to see, when I walk in there, my face lights up, that we're open to all, everyone's welcome. And just the conversations that I hear lets me know that people are starting to get it, right? The work is being done and people are feeling like they do belong. They're feeling like they're valued and that they are making some strong strides towards, the greater good. And when I look at those two, I'm often in my car driving home and I just have this big aha moment, like, wow, we did this today at the diaper bank. Well, I'm gonna go to her social club and I hear this, oh my God, I heard that, and just to see that people are starting to get it what scares me is we're not there. And some people think, oh God, we feel so much better. We've still got a lot of work to do. And I think this is one way to do it, is by having these conversations with this wonderful group of panelists, and all of you who wanted to come and hear more about Black philanthropy and what it means to us. And I know I'm all over the place, but God, you guys have done a great job at covering everything. And I'm gonna stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts, and thank you for what you're doing in our community, especially from the perspective of a Black business owner, and bringing a social club here to Tucson, because we all know the history of what happened with the Blue. And so it's really happy to see us gather again, brick and mortar style. So thank you. We're now a part of this agenda going to go into a few questions. And so I want to ask all of our attendees to please use the chat feature. And if you have a question for one of the panelists, please put it into the chat and then we'll pull that out. But to get the ball rolling, I'm just going to start with some of the questions we had previously. And one of the huge questions we had is, what are we doing? What are we doing currently? I know with our organization, Blacks Friday, we had a beautiful opportunity of working with both Dr. Whitaker and Taniqua on a Black paper that came out in February 2021. Again, highlighting in Arizona specifically what organizations are doing to really uplift Black business ownership as well as entrepreneurship. In March 2021, the state of Black Arizona came out with their Black business report that really supported the data that's happening here throughout the entire state. And so I want to open up to the panelists in a really broad question. What are we doing currently?
I can start. There's so much to say. I want to also thank Dr. Roberts for what he had to say. And I wanted to put a little clarification to the comment around 5,000 wasn't enough, 25. And I think many of you guys know this, that I can spend my time raising a little bit of money, or I can get a chunk of money to actually spend more time for impact. So it's truly about impact. When you're considered very much a small grassroots organization trying to build capacity, and not every culturally specific organization wants to be big. Sometimes we need to be the size we need to be with a smaller number of staff. That sometimes becomes the greater impact. So these are just things that I just wanted to make sure I followed up on. But what are we doing? Ashley, I feel like we're working together, a little bit more collaborative and a little bit stronger, I think, as a Black community around the issues and the inequities that we have seen that need to change. We don't print pretty reports, so we have the opportunity to have pretty reports. We print them because the recommendations need immediate action. It is on fire, folks. We need to make change. So what I have loved about that is coming together with those in the community, business or nonprofit, to say, okay, what are we gonna do to drive other people as well as ourselves for action? And I love that other people have reached out to me and said, okay, T, what can we do to help the work? What can we do? That has happened a lot more in this last year than it did before. And that has to continue to happen. If you don't know what to do, the one thing you should know to do is pick up the phone or send an email and have a conversation. That's the easiest thing you can do, and begin to dialogue, because if it's about the relationship, you have to immerse yourself in building them with the communities you don't have, so you can begin to learn and to figure out how you can navigate in that space. So for me, it truly is about us all creating the action around how we need to figure out how to participate in this, even if we don't know what the strategy is or specifically what we want to do. The conversations have to happen because they haven't been happening as often as they have needed to for a lot of BIPOC and culturally specific organizations.
Yes, Taniqua, bringing up the great points indeed, especially saying that it's a continuum. So not just a trend, not just in a certain month, but throughout the whole season, throughout the whole year. Just in the interest of time, I will go over to the next question. But Dr. Roberts, Dr. Whitaker, if you'd like to add or contribute to that question, please do. We also have some snaps for Taniqua in the chat. Thank you. Looking at a question from Martin. He asks, how is this discussion of Black philanthropy different in Arizona, the Southwest, versus the South or Northeast part of the country? It's a good question. Regionally, how are we different here in Arizona? Anyone want to take that one? Yes, Dr. Whitaker. And your mute button.
All right, tag, I'm in. I'm the muted person. Every call, there's at least one person, right? I would say this. I think one of the differences has to do with demographics. Our percentage of the population is much smaller than, let's say, Philly, New York, Houston, Miami, places like that, especially in Arizona. And because of that, the smaller number of us and the fact that we're more diffuse, right? We're spread out all over the state means a couple of things. Number one, we need to work on being better connected to each other. And I think this is a great effort, right? To start to do that, to be connected. And we also need to be able to know where the dollars are, right? And where the advocacy is. I will say this, over the last year and a half, I have almost all of my clients have come to me and said, we want to invest some money into BIPOC communities. Where do we go? Right? Because for many of them, let's just be honest, I'm the only Black person other than some of their employees, and there are just not that many of them, that they have a relationship with. And it's a business relationship, but there it is. And so they'll come to me and ask, we have X amount of dollars. Can you give us some organizations that might be able to benefit from it? And I'll ask them, well, what is your mission, your values, so there can be some alignment. And I think we need to be able to have answers for those folks when they come, and or create more of a direct conduit between them and organizations that receive, manage, and disperse funds to folks like us. Most of them, there's a lot of, I was asked about 6 years ago, to go speak someplace. And the person who invited me to come said, yeah, come on out, Doc. We need some young people to talk to folks. And I said, well, when I first moved back to Arizona, I was young, but I'm in my mid 40s right now. If I'm the young people you're referring to, then we got a big gap, right? And I say that because there's lots of truly young people out there in their 20s and 30s that are doing great work, that are operating under the shadow of some of the long-standing leaders in the community that it's like a blind spot for those who want to disperse their money. They know who the usual suspects are, but they have no idea who the next two generations of leaders are. So I think we need to do a better job of connecting those. I think people are identifying that, but we need to do a good job of assisting those folks in getting the dollars that they need to do what they're doing on the ground. So I don't want to keep going, but I think that's key.
I was going to quickly say, Ashley, the difference as well is that we don't have a lot of big foundations on our side. Like there are a lot that we are starting to be able to access in areas like California and Washington. And what the data also showed from the report is that many of the BIPOC organizations are getting more funding from foundations outside nationally than in our own state in Arizona. So I think Flint is our oldest, and Piper and Wow, I think they both have sets of money, it's not to the magnitude going back east. And so we are already sort of at a deficit where there's not a lot to then pour in, but there are a lot of people here who do have wealth who could begin to distribute that in a different way. And I think a little bit of that is happening, but a lot more of that has to happen, I think, in the next few years to kind of create more equity around being able to make sure culturally specific organizations in a state like Arizona can thrive, understanding our state is mostly made up of small businesses and even smaller businesses of nonprofits.
Mhm.
Absolutely, Taniqua. Thank you for bringing up that great point, especially for the state of Arizona about getting funding within this state and foundations being developed to support that. We have one more question in the chat, and just in the interest of time, we just want to make sure we want to leave a few minutes at the end so that we are able to wrap up with AFP. But just to address this last question here in the chat from Julie, and this is in response to what Taniqua said earlier. Taniqua mentioned how important it is to be shifting the distribution of power when it comes to philanthropy and community impact. In your opinion, Taniqua, or any of the other panelists, what can we as a sector that is mostly white-led be doing to shift the distribution of power? Great question. Who wants to take that one?
Dr. Shannon, you can go, but Taniqua, I got this one. If you give
No,
me,
you know, Taniqua, I want to hear you. Listen,
That's-
I want to hear you. Go for it.
That's why I didn't say anything.
All right, I can see
your
it in her face like, I got this. You go right ahead.
And Ashley knows I have a few minutes before I'm running off to the airport, but
Go for it.
I have 3 points, and I have been sharing this recently with a lot of foundations. Listen more. First of all, you need to listen more and try to balance the power of the relationship. Money should not be the dominance of your relationship, meaning that a lot of times when funders come to culturally specific organizations, they are so almost excited that they are now doing whatever they need to do, which means that it's not authentic. So you can't balance the relationship. So try to listen more and really learn about the organization. Remove your assumptions and biases and really try to get to know the leader. Can the leader lead the work that they need to do and work from that thought? Also, try to break down a lot of the explorative practices that are currently in philanthropy. There are already some practices that already stifle us from being able to have racial equity in that work. So you need to make sure that you are looking at those policies and practices. And the last thing is allow grantees to negotiate. If you've heard of liberatory grant making, it truly is stop coming to me and asking me what you want, coming to me and then asking me, what can I fund? And then when I tell you what I can fund, you pick the thing that you want to fund because it gives you more visibility. So you're going to have to actually at this point say, how can we negotiate so that I am helping you grow your organization's mission, not making sure your name is on the marquee.
Mic drop. Yes. Thank you, Taniqua. And with that, and with the remaining 2 minutes we have before 9, I'd love to hand it right back over to AFP. Again, I'm Ashley LaRussa, and honored again just to be a moderator for this event. Thank you.
Ashley, thank you so much. This was absolutely amazing. And I also, like Dr. Roberts, took some notes because I wanted to point out a couple of things. And I'm sorry that Fiona left because I wanted to thank her for reminding us the importance of passion in everything that we're doing. I realized when she said heavy, I realized how hard I was pushing on my own heart. And that really meant something to me. And Dr. Whitaker, thank you for sharing the history. I am so grateful to you for sharing that knowledge with our community. And Taniqua, those data points were eye-opening, and I am going to be calling you because I want to talk to you more. And Dr. Roberts, talking about the meaning behind the gift was so important to me because that's something that we forget about. And I'm very grateful to you for bringing that up. And thank you all so much for joining us and sharing with our Southern Arizona fundraising community.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.